All right. Hi, everybody. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Whitney Brewer. I am a body positive photographer based out of Dayton, but traveling all over the world to inspire others to fall in love with themselves just the way they are. And today I have a very special guest, my first actual interviewee, Ryan Mason. Thank you so much for joining today and opening your heart and your all the feels and inspiration today. So thank you for being here. If you'd like to go ahead and introduce yourself, go for it.
Sure. My name is Ryan Mason. I was one of Whitney's clients in July. I first approached Whitney, to get some shots of my, changing body during a time of transition. I'm transgender, um, assigned male at birth. And yeah, so really just approached Whitney because I loved her photography style and wanted to have that for myself at this like really important juncture. I came out at work. I was starting to like really love my body, which is changing every day, frankly. But yeah, so I just approached Whitney and the rest is history.
How long ago did you start your transition?
So I started, the quote unquote like physical transition, like medicalized transition, which not every transgender person does. Um, Back in February of 2018 now. So we're going on, or sorry, February of 2019. So we'll
Okay.
be into 2 years this February. And, for me, that meant taking a testosterone blocker um, and a lower dose of hormones at first. And we kind of kicked it up a little bit in the last several months during the pandemic. And I've noticed a lot more changes. And that's kind of why I came to you, finally getting really comfortable in my own skin, in my own body. Um, I grew my hair out during the pandemic. Like it was close cropped, like pixie cut, and I always swore like, "Oh, I'll never look right." I mean, seriously, you just never look right. And then as my hair started to get longer and longer, I'm like, I kind of dig this, right? Will it ever be like down to my shoulders? Maybe not, but I've been really comfortable with everything. Um, and that physical transition was kind of preceded by years worth of like therapy, talking to my friends and family. I came out to my wife now more than 8 years ago. It was during kind of the beginning of our marriage, um, and then I came out to friends about 4 years ago. And then what really was a catalyst for everything, changes in my body like started to show a little bit more than what I could hide. For
Okay.
um, and we were starting a new diversity council at my job, and as part of that, if I wanted to be a part of that, I had to come out. Right? You can't like hide what's
Right.
being of yourself and not be and be a part of something, change based and, that monumental because it's the inaugural DEI, Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Council that my company's ever had. So it was kind of coming from all of that pandemic, everything going on, both with myself and the world. And, here we were at the juncture that I contacted you and it's like, look, I need this right now as part of like this journey that I'm on. So
So it sounds like it's been a very long journey.
right. I mean, the first time I said the word transgender, I was 19, and about myself, in years of packing that back down, and for a lot of reasons, relationships, work, um, you know, the things that you think are possible, right? And you kind of all weigh those, right? Ultimately, it is a choice to transition. Although many transgender people really come to an inflection point. Either go on living, not living how they are, or transitioning. And I didn't really feel that way up until very recently. Like this is something that has to happen. This has to happen like now. Just for my own mental health, as well as um, how can you go on year after year like not being yourself and knowing that there's this thing that you can do to feel better about how you are in your body, right? Because there's this narrative that trans people are like born in the wrong body. There are some people that feel that way for sure, but like I was born in the right body, and there are just things that I'm doing, to make it more comfortable for me to live in it.
Got it. So what would be, I love that. I'm like, I need a minute to digest that. So you just mentioned that there's like this kind of like shit or get off the pot. Like you make this move and you be who you be and you be who you are and you let your, you essentially resist it or almost cave essentially. What would be your advice for someone that's at that spot um, in that place that you were at, and what would you suggest to someone who is stuck there?
Right. Um, it's scary. It seems big and monumental, and it is, but you can do it, right? You can do it. I think the key is having good access to mental health care as well as physical health care.
Mm.
One of the big impediments, one of the big barriers for trans folks, not having access to that affirming care. So that's a big barrier, right? I was very lucky in Columbus, Equitas Health, really throughout Ohio. Equitas Health is kind of a leader in that space. But there are others too. There's folks, at Ohio State, and even in private practice. I started with a person in private practice, moved to Equitas Health. But really, if you're able to find that affirming care, working with a therapist to figure out what your feelings are, right? Because a lot of people are scared, like, am I trans? Am I this? Am I enough of that? Look, if you're having those feelings, like I can't tell you how your journey is going to end up, what path you should take. But if transitioning is something that you feel, in every spot of your being that you need to do, and you're just not doing it because you're afraid, do it. Because whatever you are, or whatever the fears that you have, surrounding transition, um, you know, they are going to pale in comparison to that sense of regret. And you hear folks that have transitioned later in life say, like, look, I lived half a life because, I wasn't able to transition, or, even coming out of the closet. Like, I think folks take for granted that, like, you can come out as gay, you can come out as bi, and there are still parts of the country, parts of the world where that isn't something you can do.
You're
Uh,
right.
40% of folks at work that are in the LGBTQ plus community are not out at work. 40%, right? And you think of all the water cooler conversations, or now the Zoom happy hours, or whatever we're having. Now, you think of all the things that you just can't talk about. Maybe it's your partners. Maybe it's what you got up to that weekend. All of those sorts of things. So recognizing all of those, potential barriers. If it's something you feel you need to do, you can do it. It's something that is, doable. And
It sounds like it's attainable. It's just with support and trusting, therapy and
therapy and
yeah.
medical providers, if that's the direction you go to, friends, family. I mean, I can't discount enough, the support that I've had from my wife, or discount at all the support that I've had from my wife, friends, especially now. Like, it's hard being 36 and like coming into like this brand new body and hormones and all these things that people go through during puberty. I've always hated that word.
It is a weird word.
It's a very weird word, and it was always like whispered in hushed tones,
It's
you know, when you're
puberty. We're going
yeah,
through changes.
and like the videos, like the different videos that boys and girls, men and women were supposed to watch. But yeah, I can't discount that, you know, sort of support enough. Look, I know there are plenty of situations where family are not affirming of choices, but seek out people who are. Seek out, you know, other members of the LGBTQ plus community, um, you know, in finding your way, because some folks find that sort of support with, you know, group, um, I won't say group therapy, but group peer support networks. But there are group therapy sessions with competent providers, you know, trans and LGBTQ plus competent providers. There are those sorts of avenues that you can take. Don't lose hope, okay? Because you know, you start to lose hope that you'll never feel right in your body, that everything just goes wrong. I mean, I've seen people from all sorts of, you know, socioeconomic strata, races, genders, um, you know, occupations, just about every walk of life, that once they decided to transition, you know, it was a marketable improvement, um, you know, in their mental health, and that just their, you know, understanding of who they are in the world. Um, you know, I still have bad days because during this time, like it's rough not having bad days. When you hear, you know, all of the you know, social injustice that's going on in the world right now, that's always been there, right? That's, you know, kind of come to the fore, or you know, the COVID restrictions, um, politics, in general, right? You're gonna have bad days, but I felt much better in terms of like who I am. And it's like it's there's a line in Forrest Gump where he's Forrest is talking about money, and he goes, well, you know, after I invested in Apple, I think he said a fruit company, you know, that was just one less thing I had to worry about, and this is just one less thing, right? For me,
Oh, that's a brilliant way to put it.
it's beginning to be one less thing. Now, you know, we can discuss a little bit about like some of the challenges, especially presenting, you know, more or less full time. Like there are new challenges because like you never stop, you very rarely get to stop coming out, right?
Well, absolutely. And you know, that's interesting that you say that, because I feel like um me and my sexuality and my being, I feel very similarly, that like there's always growth coming, and there's always something to improve on, and there's always a way to better myself and to really also hone in on who I am. I'm still figuring that, and I'm, you know, I was born a female, and I still identify as a female, and um, what you're saying sounds so human, and it's relatable. And with that being said, I wanted to pop into dysmorphia, because I know that that was something that you have talked about in your experiences, and how maybe your experience before the photo shoot, and then during and after, and how that all, if it was supportive at all, with your dysmorphia.
Well, and yeah, I mean, so there's two kind of things going on, right? There's the dysmorphia, kind of the more common term that people talk about, where you see something about your body that like is not representative of physical reality, right? That's what dysmorphia kind of generally is known to be, right? So a lot of people with various you know, body disorders, whether that's anorexia or, you know, the host of others, they often will have dysmorphia. A skinny person will see someone like that's way out of proportion, that needs to change their body even more drastically, or you know, someone will see, a flaw in their facial features or some other body feature that like is outstretched, not just like, well, the nose is a little crooked, like to a point where, it's not conforming to reality, right? And I know everybody's lived reality is different, but there's reality and then there's not reality. And sometimes what your brain processes in the mirror isn't the same. Well, I had a little bit of that, from my teenage years. I definitely had, unhealthy eating habits where I would starve myself to make weight for wrestling. It's kind of a common thing for, teenage boys, that are wrestlers, or if you had to make weight for Pee Wee football, like I did, you had to lose weight so you could actually play Pee Wee football. So, you know, there was that piece of it. And then there's the dysphoria. So, like, the element, so dysphoria is in, where you expect to see or have recognized something different than is actually kind of represented in your physical form at the current time. So a lot of the most common form of dysphoria for a lot of people is hearing the recorded voice. Because the voice you hear in your head very often is not the voice that is projected outward. For me, I hear like much higher voice in my own head than is projected outward. I hate my recorded voice.
Fascinating.
I love like talking on the phone, but like the fact that I am immediately recognized as male, it's kind of awkward, right?
Right.
So there's two competing things going on, and the photo shoot that we had definitely addressed both of those elements, and kind of coaxed out of me, some feelings about like, the uncomfortable parts, such as, my stomach area. I know a lot of people are, feel uncomfortable about their stomach area.
I'll give you a rough percentage of clients that I've worked with that are uncomfortable with their stomachs. Are you ready? 100%.
Right.
Okay, carry on. It's a common thing.
Because if you have abs, you're like, well, are they all
it's never good enough.
Right. And so like there's some like photographs that are not like perfect, right? That show these things that some people like. I think that the easiest thing for me to talk about like my dysmorphia is like a lot of people are okay with like that imperfection. Like, well, when I sit down, there's little rolls, but like, whatever. Like, I'm not going to bother myself with it.
It's me.
Like, there have been times where like I would be obsessed with that, and like just mortified and so uncomfortable, like as to not exist in social situations particularly well.
What changed?
I think like over the last year and a half, especially like I like what I see, especially like when I'm staring downward. Like I have some curves and some hips, and you kind of let some of that go. But also, over the last couple of months, after seeing some of the photography that we did together, being able to like see what the actual like visual representation of that, because you're not like in there with Photoshop heavy editing, to give me like walking the abs where there are none. No, you let the rolls come out. You let all of those things be represented, short of my, short of sort of coloration issues, and really let the person shine as who they are, right? Do I love every image the same way? No, but like that's not what it's about. Like I wasn't. There was no image that you shot where I was like, whoa, like I'm disgusting, or I'm a freak, or like whatever. And there are some times, like especially in years past, where I would take selfies, or like my wife and I would be on vacations, and I know that's caused some tension, right? Because like I'm having a great time, and I'm like, oh, I just don't really want my picture taken because I'm afraid of what that represents,
Mm-hmm.
what was out there. So
Mm-hmm. So it sounds like you were able to step into appreciating not only the physical body, but also the journey
right,
that you've taken to get here and honoring yourself for that. And then it's almost like I feel like your specific session was like a celebration. Like, look at what I've done and look at where I've come from and what I've created for myself. And I'm confident in this body that houses my
right,
soul, which is amazing, by the way. Um, yeah, you've just been so inspiring. And like I said, I think that you have so much to say that people can really resonate with, and that, that might be supportive in their own journey. So, me, I just can't stay quiet when somebody has good, juicy content and, a beautiful story to tell. So, I was having a conversation with a friend of mine, and she was telling me, and you also mentioned this at the very beginning of, our relationship, that, um, that trans people are objectified and, sexualized. And it was something that I didn't know. And then I was talking to a friend of mine who was like, no, there's like a whole category in porn for that specific thing, and it's very popular. And so I would really like to, educate my viewers on this subject, because it's something that I am not educated about and that I feel is important to talk about. So, what's your
right.
insight?
Yes. So I think it's like a lot of mainstream pornography. It's really like designed for, you know, cisgender, that is, men who were born men, are comfortable with being men, cisgendered men. And there's an entire genre of transgender porn that like represent often some of the only images up until very recently of trans people in their own body, in any representation at all in their own bodies, on film or otherwise. And being able to take some more you know erotic leaning photos, or like photos where I am not wearing any clothing with you, um, I think was like empowering to me to create some of that sort of imagery for myself. Like,
Mm-hmm.
because all too often trans people naked, it's for someone else. It's for someone else. It doesn't represent our lived experience. Doesn't represent like how trans people necessarily want to be seen in society. Um, so yeah, so there's all of those sorts of things. Whenever I think it was probably like you know I mean years and years before I saw a trans person naked on their own terms, entirely on their own terms, without those sorts of like porn tropes attached. There's a photographer named Dave Nance, that did a wonderful book, the name of which is escaping me right now. That Dave Naz, if you're looking for the book, that really like showcased and highlighted trans folks. Some of the pictures were one dimensional, but it was on their own terms, telling their stories, interspersed with stories. And that was kind of inspiration to, for me at least, some of the images that I wanted to see with you. So
What is, I'm curious, and I don't know how to ask this question, so I'm going to do the best I can. Uh, so mainstream pornography objectifying trans people and your experience with me, what was the difference? Like what did you feel? What were the sensations going on, and what made that different from what you usually see on in the media?
Right. So like number one, everything was on my own terms, made me feel entirely comfortable about the experience. And it's definitely a collaborative process. There's not like,
Definitely.
do this for me, like it's a very collaborative process to create images that we're both proud of. And I think, um, for trans people, it's giving folks that agency, um, that a their bodies are beautiful, um, and you know there's a conceptualization of like normalcy, right? Like this is how a normal body looks, and this is how this sort of a body looks. It's a body, and we're all normal. That sort of a language, it's really limiting for yourself, but b, it just creates this like bifurcation of how people treat each other. Like there's good bodies over here, there's bad bodies over there. And in working with you, it just allowed me to design an experience for myself that was um, emblematic of what I would want other trans folks to have in whatever situations they're in. If they're creating artwork, depicting their own bodies, or like on film, or just depictions of trans folks in general. Just make me feel comfortable. Um, just to be me in my own skin, and figuring things out.
And I think that is a perfect, like that's a great segment into authenticity. That's my superpower. And I find that when you're able to be authentic, you become free. And so you're like, this transition has been, it's been work and work and work and work. And it sounds like you finally found your freedom.
Right.
And you're just running with it. And I think that's so beautiful that like you've been able to, and for the people that are terrified, that are in this process, like there are people that have probably a million questions, like what do you do with the photos after you're done? I personally have people like, what do I do with those after I'm done with them? And for me personally, I continue to book sessions because I like being able to document what my body's doing. I'm 32 years old, and 10 years ago my body looked completely different. And it's not sexualized, it's art. It is it's beauty, it's capturing beauty, it's photography. And I think that me being able to be authentic also creates that space for you to be that way as well, which is why the images become you. They are you, because that's the space that I allowed you to be in, and you felt safe to do it. And I literally can't thank you enough for trusting me to capture you authentically and to work with you, because you've just been so wonderful and inspiring. So if there's anything else, I've taken up exactly 30 minutes of your time, so I don't want to take up any more, but if there's any advice or anything that you want to wrap up and say, feel free to do so.
No, I would just say, this is definitely worth it. As something to do for yourself. You know, trans, cis, however you're feeling. To document your body, and you know, to honor, whatever juncture of the journey, your life journey you're on. I know your clients, run the gamut of folks in their 70s and 80s on down to newborns, right? Um, and it's really important to have, those sorts of moments, captured, because we live in a digital culture now, and so much of it's like, pictures don't mean the same thing if they're not like printed out, if they're not like, if you don't go through kind of a process and work with someone, like we take a million selfies and we do all the things. And I'm not saying don't do that, right? But like,
Please do. Yes. Take all the selfies.
yeah, take all the selfies. But if you're able and you feel like it's something that you need to do, like take a step back, work with someone such as yourself to document where you are in your life journey. And even if it's just for you, like most of these pictures are for me. They're for me.
Yeah. What I was going to ask, what have you done with the images? What are your plans for the future with your images?
There were a couple like trusted places that I posted them. A few of them, a real small sampling of them.
Should we
Where,
share them while you're talking?
or you can definitely share those ones. Um, where I, really felt that I would get some good feedback, on the images and just kind of, feeling like, like, me sharing them in those spaces would be a thing that other people would find inspirational, as well as just to join in that kind of human conversation, to join in the conversation. And I haven't talked about it a lot during this time, but to join in the conversation is like being seen as a woman, because there are lots of options for trans people. There's non-binary trans folks, but for me, it really is that process that's physical, emotional, mental, of transitioning from one thing to another. Some folks are like, I've always been a woman, just they're not it out. I mean, for me, it really is a transitional experience, right? um, where I may have had these feelings, but now they're kind of enacted in the world. So
Mm.
yeah.
Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy ass schedule to hang out with me today. I'm so excited to share this, and you are more than welcome to share it on your social media once I'm all finished with it. So thank you. Lots of love to you, and we'll chat soon.
Bye.
Bye.